Probably enough to go on, so I'll just read the poem. Audubon. Early America's gone, extinct like the passenger pigeon. Skies once an avalanche of migration, now vacant, but for clouds and vapor trails. The rare vector of bleating Canada geese or a lone mallard. And the land below laid bare, its forests cut and burned, demoted to tarmac, to strip malls and gated suburbs. When ancestors at 7 removes paused to scan the green wild, impassable except where pierced by trails non-natives couldn't scout, they guessed more than was sayable about the unsurveyable, and their own intrusion trivial. Audubon differed. Subduing the awe reconnaissance stunned him with, he leaned on his rifle atop the sharp promontory, and in-dreamed a misted river valley grown vocal with piped solfege from the birds of America. Brushstrokes of oil or wash won their idea. Taut silk blades extended a fan to grasp buffeting updrafts, a shot taken on the wing, one gape-staring fish cramponed in airborne rapture, nature's tandem food chain kidnapped and shipped to the Royal Society. What he couldn't send was context. Limitless terraces of air, the woodlands slip-knotted with vine and briar, creeks sweet with tannin, the crossfire gaze of bear and cougar, scats, a ribcage stripped clean by crook-necked scavengers, insurgents of mosquito tribes, ponds paved with lilies, a singular glycerin pearl affixed to each veined disc. Epochs that saw the uprush of aeronautic tribes filmed in mirroring watercolor are past and gone. A wilderness, a fauna erased. Not banished, banished. It won't return, or not until we go. Passengers. I was talking with some friends recently. We was talking about our past, how we came up in the world and so forth. And I mentioned that something really quite awful happened to me very early on, in fact, at age 2. And that was, my mother died, and I was too young to have any memories of her. I still feel it was the worst thing that ever happened to me, even though I don't have any memories. This poem tries to fictionally construct memories that I don't have about her. And I don't quite know how it happened. I was living in New York, and I went to an old 19th century hotel in upstate New York just to spend the weekend. And while I was there, it was cold and it was winter. As I sort of fell asleep one night, these images came drifting up as though I was back at age 2 and that my mother was still alive and so forth. But I don't have any concrete memories. It's really a fictional act to try to reconstruct them. But that's what this poem tries to do. It's called Darkening Hotel Room. The glass on the picture from the Bible has gone pale and reflective, the mirror dull. A room of rectangles, dark door moldings, gray windows, mind itself turning corners from sleep to awareness to attention to notions. Up and down the hallway, doors open to boom shut, and always less light. The porcelain lamp exists in silver outline, drawn something like those solemn curls on the pillar capital silhouetted outside. 90 winters this room has housed other selves, young women in long dresses, men like walruses bearded, Bibles, crochet, ointment. They would be gathering for warmth around the fireplace that now stands empty, dark, cold. Others fell asleep in this hour, that ornate pillar, the last image formed in closing eyes, the curtain descending. something between dream and not dream that goes back 30 years and 1,000 miles away. I almost see her standing at the sink wearing a cotton blouse, slacks, a little thin, what with rationing, a husband in the Pacific, 3 children. She glances at the Turk's caps and lantana outside. No, that was a later house. Afternoon light models her face into fatigue, kindness, a worry wrinkle between dark brows, curly hair, short and not well arranged. In another room, someone misses a note of the scale, and she bends down to me, a mound of not much more than self. She smiles, her head turning this way, that way. This is possible, but of course not real, unless every picture held in thought silently is real. An uncommon radiance attaches itself, like the candles, to the strain and flicker of recall. Small incandescence, halo at night. It appears as a gift, second sight, with the power to transport in safe conduct to lost houses, forbidden rooms, to when she's still. But it can't be memory. I remember nothing. Absence. Which came grotesquely with toys and birthday cake, they told me later, to reach in confidence for efficient bony arms and only find puzzling, and it still is, how a bereavement immaterially goes on, an asceticism for a lifetime, as you might choose caution and thoughtfulness, in order to survive. Survive. The blunt desire to endure, imagining what might be restored. I don't remember, nonetheless see light, afternoon, as she bends down in large outline, like a cloud approaching. The man wrapped in darkness is free to dream. All those I invite may inform this space, my company, until the darkened room rises to the surface, coming back like someone's biography summoned up whole, to be relived and almost understood. The bearded man may have done as much, suddenly reaching out for the young woman banked next to him in the loose braid of sleep. At night's lowest point, he divides and numbers his consolations. She stirs, yawns, neither understanding nor minding his rough hug. But I won't wake you. Sleep, love, rooms that shelter us for how long? The speed of night, of thought. Older than my grandparents. Worlds later, gray light restores a picture of the Master teaching his disciples, indifferent to, unaware of us. In Spain, there is I'll stand up, that might make a difference. There's a set of caves that really rival the caves of Lascaux in France for the beauty of the art that is on their walls. It's Altamira. I wonder if anyone has been. I myself have not, so I've only read about it and looked at the pictures. I've always been fascinated with prehistoric art, the amazing ability of those early artists to render animal forms, and the simple means that they had. They didn't have our modern oil paints and so forth. They just improvised their pigments and fixatives themselves, and yet they've lasted, more than 10,000 years, and are still absolutely gorgeous. This poem about Altamira Caves is from the viewpoint of the cave. So, Altamira. A billion dawns sprang up and dimmed, lighting, then leaving a gloom few things apart from weather entered. True, creatures did, negligible, though their skitterings tickled in a way I liked. More invasive were the men, who'd managed to lap themselves in skin and fur. Once settled, something told them to stay and make into home at least at night. Brisk comings and goings otherwise, the fire's not searing, instead giving warmth, a welcome extra in our snowy months. The smell of roasting meat intrigued me, though I knew it cost some mammal pain. Next, the freehand sketching started, the smears, the painting. It seemed they regarded my deep-end walls as picture-worthy. And the beasts alive again, no longer charred, though drawn in yellow grease and charcoal. Inside, I was herd, menagerie, migration. I and that remained when the men had gone. We mentioned earlier that I have a book of poems translated into Spanish. It came out under the title that I chose called Rocinante, which is the horse that Don Quixote had. And so I thought I might read a poem from it. Actually, this was the reverse. I wrote a poem in Spanish, a couple of poems in Spanish, and then I translated them into English. And as I've done other translations, I couldn't get into English all that was in the Spanish, but it's an approximation. So I'll read the poem that I wrote in Spanish, and then I'll read my translation, and then I think I'll just finish up. Okay? All right. Is that enough? All right. It was written in the town of San Miguel de Allende, which is about 3 hours north of Mexico, and it happened during the Feast of the Assumption of the Virgin. It's very important in Mexico. I fell ill, as one so often does in Mexico, and in my sort of fever dream, began writing this poem in Spanish because I was there and I was speaking Spanish, and it just seemed like, well, I'm just going to write it in Spanish. So, La luz azul, San Miguel de Allende, Día de la Asunción. Mediodía. Ligeros velos transparentes del ancho cielo. En la estancia una sombra amorfa, blanda, no acababa de anunciar ese alto silencio que jamás ha de callar. Tan comprensiva como dulce, recíbeme luz azul que colmas los rincones. Pues inmóvil, no, mejor fuera salir en busca del asunto. La palabra de mortal piedad, caída como una flor ardiente entre las piedras de la calle. The Blue Light, San Miguel de Allende, Feast of the Assumption. 12 noon, the open skies transparent, weightless veils. In the room, a mild, amorphous gloom wouldn't give up announcing that exalted silence that will never again hold its peace. As comprehensive as you are gentle, gather me in, blue light, you filling up the corners. Immobilized then? No, better to go out in search of the assumed subject, the word, embodied, compassionate, fallen like a flame-red flower among the streets' rough cobblestones. Thank you. Well, that poem that I read about my mother's death, sort of like conscious life began with tragedy, and it was only the first. I hate to say it, but I sort of felt like I didn't want my life to be nothing but suffering and pain and tragedy, and I turned to the arts in general and writing in particular as consolations. I think that art really is one of the greatest consolations that we have for the difficulties that we face in life. So I thought that if I myself was going to write, then what I wrote had to offer some sort of consolation. Otherwise, I'm just adding to the misery. It's a funny thing that Randall Jarrell said. He was for several years the poetry editor for The Nation magazine, and he said, they got all these submissions. He said every week we would get a torn off leg or an arm with scrawled in lipstick on it, "This is a poem." And I don't want to write that. I want to deal with the sufferings in life, but I would like to offer some way, some pleasure, some consolation, some counterbalance to the ghastly things that happen to all of us. That's really one of my motives, is to create something that, as was created for me and helped me get through the difficulties of life, to see that there was somewhere in some realm, if only in the imagination, order, beauty, harmony, and happiness.
That's pretty good.